Welcome to Sparkstarter, the podcast dedicated to sharing stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I'm your host, Elizabeth Godey, and I'm here to fan the flame of your entrepreneurial spirit. Each week, we bring to you the inspiring stories of women trailblazers from around the world who have sparked change in their industries, powered their ideas into thriving businesses, and pioneered their way to success. So, whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a startup enthusiast, or a seasoned business leader, join us as we delve into the journeys of these incredible women whose tales will surely ignite a spark in each one of us. Today, I'm joined by Becca Dernberger, president of Avancer Executive Search. Becca built Avancer from scratch 6 years ago, drawing on her 35 years of connecting people with meaningful work. Her journey began as a high school cashier at Ace Hardware, where she first saw the impact of good customer service. Before founding Avancer, Becca climbed the ranks at Manpower, eventually leading their Northeast division. Now she's applying that experience to her own company and reshaping how businesses find top talent. Beyond work, Becca is the mother of four, and she has competed in 7 marathons. She's active in her community, serving on several boards, including the West Coast Chamber. Today, we're going to explore Becca's path from employee to owner and how she's navigating the challenges of running a woman-owned business and executive search. Thank you so much, Becca, for joining me here on the Sparkstarter podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's great to be here.
So, Becca, I know that we spoke in the studio a little bit earlier, and I said we weren't going to start with discussing your sort of initial beginnings back in high school at Ace Hardware, but I forgot that I had slipped that into your intro. So I guess we're going to start there anyway.
Oh, that was a long time ago, but yes.
Well, I think it's an interesting, when we look at the positions that we had early, right? Like in that time where we were not adulting necessarily, and we were sort of just trying to figure out our foray into the business world. I do think it does start to form your experience in what you're going to do later in your career. And I love the sort of customer service aspect of having to work sort of that retail job, right? And so when you think about that and then going into Manpower, just help us bridge that, since I made us start there anyways. Just help me bridge that gap of how did you actually originally get to Manpower?
Yeah, great question. So Hope College was how I got into Manpower and graduated in 1984. And the economy was not great then, and interviewed through the placement office there, Dale Austin, who I still give great credit to for starting my career, just scheduling that interview and coming on campus, and interviewed with Manpower and started off as a second shift staffing specialist. And just really was fortunate to find that job, because I mean, you mentioned high school, but also college. A lot of times you really don't know what you want to do or where that career path is going to take you. So those early experiences are so important. They don't feel important at the time. They just feel like, oh, I need a job, or this is what I do next. And those early years really are building the foundation of who you become. And the other piece of that, Elizabeth, which I think is why I often think of my Ace Hardware experience, is all of the people that you work with that are 30 to 40 years older than you as a high schooler, but the feedback that they would give, the encouragement that they would give, those are really important relationships. And even if they don't realize that, those seeds and those comments stay with people. I'm sure you've had that, those early adult relationships that really help you become who you are professionally. So important.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And for people who have never heard of Manpower, could you just give a little nugget into what Manpower does?
Yes. Yep. So Manpower is a placement company, global organization, 22 billion, I think, when I left. And they, industrial placement and professional placement, and great organization. Thousands of people globally that work there. But started off, as a small little organization, and then it grew to be a global company. And their growth came mainly through organic growth, not acquisition, which I think also was this, part of their culture.
Yeah, and so when you started with them, you started at an office in
Mhm.
West Michigan.
Yeah.
And you certainly rose through the ranks, I guess is like a little bit of an understatement. It's one thing to say that, you sort of ran the Northeast division, but I mean, that was pretty significant, right? What was the size business you were running at that point?
When it was a franchise, we had 14 offices, about 70 million in revenue. And started off as a second shift, I think we were called staffing specialists then, now recruiter. But back then it was, second shift staffing specialist. So I'd come in at 3:00, so the first shift people could go home, and worked in that role for about a year, and then continually grew throughout the company and became the president of the franchise, and just worked with an incredible group of individuals that are still friends today. So very, very fortunate that that franchise family helped me develop and grow and gave me great opportunities.
Yeah. And I think that I mean, first of all, being a woman at the sort of time period that you were working there, I mean, that was pretty amazing to get to be president and then continue on to even a larger piece of the business and, more broadly. And and so from that standpoint, you started in sort of more of the manufacturing side of things, but you had a lot of business sides to do, right? As you rose through the ranks. So you went from sort of starting at the recruiter side, which is like the piece that I think from the outside world would be that you handled the actual people that would do the work, right? Like that was the side that you started on. But as you grew and you took on more responsibilities in the business, you I mean, you had more responsibilities in the business, I guess I would say that. I mean, you had everything from managing the P&Ls, you had encouragement and training of other, salespeople, account people, and other recruiters. Can you talk a little bit about specifically what you were doing, in that sort of like, I'm going to call it the like last couple years that you were still at Manpower?
Yeah, in the franchise or the corporation?
No, in the corporation.
In the
So eventually
corporation,
you
yeah.
went from the franchise to the corporation.
Yes. Yep. So our franchise owner sold, and we became part of Manpower Corporate, which again is a global organization. And the U.S. was divided into 3 territories. So we had 3 VPs that ran North America. So I had 11 states. So the Northeast division, and just an incredible opportunity, which you're right, you get farther away from the day to day as you grow in an organization and more into that executive leadership. So spent a lot of time on growing the business, forecasting, more of a strategic role, which thoroughly enjoyed. And my heart was still with the day-to-day part of it. I think that's just because that's where I started in the organization. I didn't start in that executive management. So I feel like I really valued and understood what the day-to-day life was, and had to really also be more of that executive leader. And again, just great opportunity working for a global organization. And the other piece with that, Elizabeth, were the companies that I was able to be exposed to in West Michigan. Loved, this customer base and the customers that are in Michigan. And when you work for a global organization, you really get a peek into just world renowned brands and labels, and then understanding and seeing how they operate a business. That was fascinating. And also, we, no matter what size business, it's often the same issues, whether you're a small business or a big business.
That's the
It's
secret. That's the thing, is that when you run a small business, people always think that there's, like they wouldn't have this in a big business. And I would say it's just exponentially grows.
Yeah, I think so. And I feel so fortunate because I worked for a privately held company. I worked for a publicly traded company, and now working as a business owner. I just so value each one of those paths in life, and no one is better than the other. Each have challenges, but I just feel really thankful to have been able to experience all three.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when you work also with a big corporation, there are sometimes things that happen, right? Like downsizing or whatever they refer to it now. I think they refer to it as like right sizing or whatever the latest terminology that's supposed to make people not feel as terrible about it. But you certainly had rose to a very high level. You're one of basically three executives that are running this entire huge organization, and then somewhat out of the blue, right? How did your time at Manpower end?
Yeah, that was hard. Did not see it coming, and was scheduled for a conference call, a Zoom call, and that is when I learned what the Zoom call was really about. And so after 32 years, so I'd been there 32 years, and then the position was eliminated, and that I guess since it was a bit of a surprise, it hit me really hard. And I learned a lot from that experience as far as how something like that gets communicated and the personal impact that has on individuals when you're hearing that, especially when you've been with a company so long. It becomes your identity, it becomes your world, it becomes your family's world. I think that's why, and I know we're not to what I do now, but I think that's really why I enjoy talking to people today that are looking for a job, maybe for the first time in their career, even though they're, well into their career. When your position is eliminated after that long, it takes some time, and that's and they, Manpower was very, very gracious, and I stayed on for several months to help with the transition, and I understood it. I've been on both sides of that table, and if the numbers aren't where the numbers should be, you start looking at cost and expenses. So understood it, but when it happens to you personally, it is personal.
Right. It is.
Understood it, appreciate how it was handled, but it just was such a shock to my system. And then what, right? And then,
well, but it opened up like a new opportunity, right? So this is in just, if people like do that math a little bit, I mean, this basically puts you into like an advanced stage of your career, I'm going to call it. And so, you wake up, and I think that there's probably multiple things going through your mind, right? There's the fact that that's like your family was ingrained. Not only were you, but like your family was ingrained in this. And then all of a sudden you sort of have this new opportunity. I always call it like a new opportunity, right? It's like, oh my gosh, so you get to actually decide what you want to do now, right?
Yes.
Nobody's telling you what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And you decided, hey, I'm going to just do my own thing.
Yeah. Eventually I got there. And this is where I just encourage people, when that happens, when whatever it is in life, right? When a big unexpected pivot happens in your life, take some time to just sit with it. And that's hard to do because we want to jump into what's next. But I really did that. I just, for a few months, kind of just disappeared in life and just really reflected and just prayed and tried to figure out what does this mean? It just really, as you can imagine, just impacted what's next. So I took the dogs for 6 walks a day. I just really pondered, and not so much because that was a strategic move and self-reflective. I just had to. I couldn't really function. So I really encourage people to just, take some time and really process the impact, because if you don't do that, then when you are ready to move on because you've decided what you're going to do, or you're going to start going out on interviews again, you've got to be okay. You've got to be okay with what happened and be able to communicate that bridge into, okay, so this is what I'm going to do next. So that's kind of that bridge that was important for me anyway, to really be able to become okay. And then that's when, during, actually one of the walks with the dogs, I just stepped back and said, what in my career, in my life, do I really, really enjoy? And that's when I decided to start my own business with this Avancer Executive Search. I wasn't ready to retire. We still have one in college, so was not ready to retire, but really wanted to do something that brought joy to me and that I could be really good at. Because I think when you leave an organization, whether it's because it's your decision or not, you do get that self-doubt, and that your confidence just gets knocked in the gut. Like, okay, I can't do anything. I'm not good at anything. So really thinking about what brings you joy, because more than likely that's what you're really good at, right? And you reflect back to our earlier conversation of feedback that you've been given over your career from people that are, whether they're your boss or your peers, and what are you really good at, and what are the things that you would be recognized for. And that was something that I just so enjoy, getting to know people and hearing their stories. How can I help them at this stage in their career? And that's what kind of triggered what I stepped into, because it's hard to start your own business, and if you do something that you don't love, it's really going to be hard. So I've just so enjoyed this journey for the past 6 years, because I love it. And that's where, take the time, figure out what brings you joy, and then step into that.
Yeah, it's I so many great little messages right in there, but it's I cannot agree with you more. And what a great opportunity when you started your business, that you took that time to reflect. I give this example, I think comes up a lot on this podcast. So I really hope that each of you that are listening aren't getting tired of these stories. But I do think sometimes, I will see, and I see this happening more with women than I do with men, which I think we could talk about a little bit later. But this idea of like, tell me what I should do, instead of really reflecting and saying, okay, but what do you want to do? Like, what are the things that make your heart sing? Because like you mentioned, it's a lot of work to start a business. It's not inexpensive to start a business. Even I love it when people are like, yeah, but like you don't have an office space, or you don't have this, or you don't have that. It's like, yeah, but there's a lot that goes into actually having the business. I mean, even just starting the business, all the licensure and everything that you have to go into. So I love that you reflected on, gave those nuggets. But now, as Executive Search, tell us a little bit what that looks like. Like, what's the best part about having this business now?
Yeah, love that question. First of all, it's fun. I really, really have fun every day, and it is talking and connecting and working with people. And what I have found, which when I started, I thought more about the company conversations and helping the companies determine what they're looking for and working with them on that ideal candidate. What's been a surprise to me that I equally enjoy is that same conversation with the candidates. Because everybody has a story. Everybody has a story, and there's no right or wrong. It's your story, and to hear the journey that people have been on, and the majority, again, it's executive search, so it's director and above. So the people that I'm talking to have had incredible careers. They've been extremely successful, and for whatever reason, they're now unemployed, looking for a job, or they're currently employed but are ready to make that next move for whatever reason. So reach out to me and just say, hey, keep me in mind if you come across anything. And those conversations and that part of the business have been extremely fulfilling. And it's and a lot of these folks, probably similar to many people in their 50s or 60s, they haven't looked for a job. They started working out of college or high school and have just been tapped for their next opportunity, for their next role, and that sometimes comes to an end, those opportunities. So helping people put a resume together, which is so hard to do when it's yourself, me included. Writing your own resume is a difficult thing to do. So I think that's been a really fun part of the job, is just getting to know both sides, the company and what are they looking for, those individuals in their story. And I ask them many of the same questions I ask myself, what really do you enjoy? What do you want to do, to your point? And then really help them land in that next role that they will really, really enjoy. And I think the other part of that is letting them know it's going to be okay. It's hard to enjoy that stage of life because you're just worried, right? You're worried about that. How am I going to take care of my family, or how am I going to keep things moving along? And they land somewhere. And we're fortunate, right? I mean, North America has some great opportunities right now. We're not in a recession. We're not in a downturn. So as long as that economy keeps staying strong, there's great opportunities for people.
Well, and thank you for saying that, because I know that there has been a lot of fear, out in the market of, are we in a recession? Is the sky falling? So I appreciate with your finger on the pulse. I mean, you certainly would know, because companies that are hiring, that where they're hiring at and those types of things.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think when we spoke earlier, I started, one of my first corporate jobs was actually in sort of the same industry, just on the creative side. I was more like an agent, but one of the most amazing things I think about doing that is you get to see people, sort of have one of the greatest excitements that they have, right? Which is like finding the position that they love, and then getting compensated for it in a way that maybe they wouldn't have necessarily been able to get on their own as well. It's not only hard to put together a resume, but sometimes it's hard to know what the offer is, hard to know like what your worth is. So there are, I think, a lot of you're downplaying it a lot, but the role that you do is pretty significant on both sides. It's you sort of help the client understand what their opportunities are, and then help find the person that and recommend the person that's going to really be the best match for them, not only for the position, but also for the culture of the company. And I think that that's where, I'm a big AI advocate, big technology advocate, but I would say that the piece that no matter what, all these big HRIS systems, these big, systems that filter through all these resumes and things, they're filtering for the skills, which is great, but they're sort of missing the culture piece. And I think that's why we've had some mixed sort of, levels of attrition within businesses increasing over the last, decade or two.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
So,
sorry, go ahead.
no, please.
Yeah, it's a very high touch entity, right? With people and placement and culture and all of those things. And it's so funny to me when I talk to both sides, the company and the person, what's your ideal job? What's your ideal candidate? And they'll describe it. And then, there's no perfect person out there and there's no perfect company. There's always something going on behind the curtain in everybody's life and in every company. And then when I think, okay, on paper, this person may not be the perfect candidate as they described. However, when they go through that interview, they're like, what a click. There was chemistry, there was a click, they fit our culture. And some of those things that were like, this is the ideal candidate, this is the most important thing. Some of it is there, but a lot of it is just that human connection, that this is somebody I want to work with. This is somebody that I want to be a part of our executive leadership team. So it truly is, it's an art and a science.
Yeah, I would say in some cases a little bit more art,
Yes.
especially in those executive leadership roles for sure. And so, Becca, sort of focusing back on the business side of things, uh, what are the things that you obviously had a unique experience because you were so high up in the business. You got to do more of the business things, right? Instead of just doing the job, you also got to do some of the business things. But when you look at actually founding your company and starting your company, what have been the things that have just been hard? Like the things that like are not the happy part of having
Yeah.
your business. Are there any of those?
Sure. Like I said, no perfect company, no perfect job. I think the hardest thing is to not have a group of peers and a group of coworkers. I'm a verbal processor, so I've got a small group of individuals that I can certainly reach out to brainstorm and to strategize and to pick their brain a little bit. But that day-to-day peer of just having buddies, just having buddies at work, that's just such a fun part of a larger company. And by larger, I mean more than one. That I think has been hard. I had a really, really good friend who just was a serial entrepreneur, and he, when I first told him I was going to start the business, he said the highs are highs and the lows are lows. And I think of that often, because when the highs happen, the good things happen, those are wonderful, but the lows can be lonely. And they don't last long. I mean, it again, with what I do, it may be, I didn't win an account that I wanted to win, or a person who I thought was going to be the right candidate wasn't the right candidate. So they're not earth-shattering by any means, but they, I think just who I am, since I'm a people person, it's just hard to not be able to share those things. But then you can't sit in that for very long, right? I mean, if I do have an off day, or if I do have something that just knocks the wind out of me, okay, you get 2 hours to mope, and then you're done, and now go back. I think that's, a lot of self-talk and a lot of, it's going to be okay, let's get back on the saddle. So I think learning that, and I look forward to someday having a team. I think I'm at that inflection point of, okay, what's the next 6 years look like? What's the next phase look like to grow and to expand? And I think I will value that a lot, and having a partner to really just bounce ideas off and share the joys and share the sorrows.
Yeah. Well, I think that's true just in life, right? I mean, and I
Yeah,
do think I love that the highs are highs and the lows are low. I mean, it's true. I think we
yeah,
can put that into a lot of relationships too.
yeah.
But from that standpoint, just sort of turning the tables a little bit, has there been something about having your business that's really surprised you? Like that thing that was just totally unexpected that you just didn't even foresee?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if it's anything that really surprised me because I knew what I was getting into. I think what I've appreciated is people that have walked alongside me and encouraged me, that were either peers, and some of them were competitors in the business, but they knew the business and they were willing to coach and give me words of wisdom, before I jumped in. So I think just a real appreciation of the support and the encouragement, has just been something I've really appreciated. I don't know if that
Yeah.
answers your question.
No, I think it does, and I love to hear that, people who had been competitors or, sort of been on the other side of the table. I think that that really just I think it echoes that human side, right? And I think that that probably also speaks to who you are as a person. Not everyone experiences that same type of support, but I think that, holding the relationships that you did, that certainly helped
Mhm.
bring
Yeah,
that piece back around.
yeah,
And so when we think about other women at different stages of life, but certainly at this sort of, in your 50s, when you lose a job, it's a very different, almost like a scary moment
mhm,
because you're at that place where you're like, am I still in the market?
yeah,
I had seen something, a woman that I'm connected to on LinkedIn was saying that she had sent out something like she had applied for like 200 jobs or something like that. And, she just couldn't handle any more, rejection after that. And the
mm,
question became, is it ageism, right? Like, is
mhm,
this a place now where it's like, I'm too old to actually go back into the market? Now,
mhm,
that's just purely from my perspective, but from my perspective, I would say I would rather hire somebody who's older than somebody who's younger because they, have more experience. They're less likely to sort of have shiny object syndrome of, needing to leave every, few months for a new position.
yeah, yeah.
But from your perspective, do you find that you're attracting more people at sort of that point in their career? And if so, like, is that a different experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of the population that I serve in that they're director and above. So they have to have had some career runway up to this point to bring the experience to be able to manage, I don't know, 200, 300 people, 100 million plus. Um, that's not going to be somebody just entering their career. That's going to be somebody who's had that experience. So I really don't experience that ageism on either sides. I think it's more of a message we tell ourselves. I think I very seldom will have, well, you can't say it, right? It's illegal to say I don't want somebody at a certain age. I hear more, I want them to have this kind of experience and I want them to have this kind of proven track record. It's really the results that you've done for the past 30 or 40 years, and have you kept up with the skill set? Those are the two things that age kind of goes out the door then. And are they a good leader of people? Because the majority, if not probably all of the roles that I serve, they're going to be a leader of people, or there's a succession plan for them to become the president or the CEO. So they have to have a proven record. They have to have kept up with whatever their industry expertise is, and that ability to be a really good leader of people to be able to take that company to the next phase of growth. So that I hear more of. And then for people who, not too many people will say, gosh, I just think I'm too old. Um, and if they do, I quickly debunk that a little bit because I don't hear it from the companies. I hear more we want that experienced person. And that's encouraging, right? They want somebody to come in to be able to make a difference in their organization. And if it's, gosh, we want somebody for the next 10 to 15 years, that's really all you can ask of an employee, right? I mean, somebody could come in and they're 25 years old. They may not give 10 to 15 years, and somebody could come in that's 50 and they may give 10 to 15. So it's really more about that individual, their confidence, their ability to not feel like, gosh, it's my age. It very seldom is. I shouldn't say, at least that's been my experience. I know there's many people that would not agree with that. I would challenge them to look at their background, look at how they're interviewing, their resume, and what types of jobs are they applying for, and are they the right jobs? I think that's another big component of this job search, making sure that your background really does fit that company's background of what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's very insightful, and I think that's a really good point. And then, of course, because this is a podcast particularly for women, my real question is this: pay gap, right? We certainly still are struggling with this pay gap. We're still struggling with getting enough women really at the executive table.
Yeah.
And my question is, are you seeing a change at all? I mean, I'm assuming in your career, in the time of your tenure of your career, I'm sure you have, but what about in the last 10 years?
Yeah, great question. So that pay gap question is complex, right? Because it's not just X amount or double X or whatever that amount is. There's so much underneath that. So let me answer that in two ways. What I experience is the majority of my candidates are men, which that was a surprise. I think you asked me that question. That's what I should have answered. That is a surprise when I'm posting C-suite positions, how much more there are men applying or me reaching out to than females. So I think that is one thing, which I'd love, that's another podcast probably, how to help these young women that are just starting out. How can you do it all? I had 4 daughters through this. My husband was a stay-at-home dad. It is possible, right? I mean, that we had kind of a unique situation, but if you really do want that career, it can be done. And then as far as the pay gap, what are the roles? What is expected of a woman versus a man when it comes to whether it's any sort of care, whether it's child care or adult care? There is another part of life which you have family members that need care. Is there a shift in more men stepping down and women staying in the career? So that pay gap is extremely, extremely important. I don't see it, but I think part of that is just because I'm dealing more with men than I am with women. To me, it's more of that opportunity and how can, whether male or female, both feel that they can have those opportunities for a robust career.
Well, Becca, what I'm hearing right now is that we just need more women to contact you about these positions that you have to fill. That's what I think I just heard.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. That it is interesting. And maybe it's West Michigan. A lot of my customers are West Michigan, and I do some placements across the US, but majority are here. So it could be a West Michigan thing. There's just not as many female executives in our area.
I would also say I think the confidence level is different. It's like women need to be overqualified to apply for a job. A man needs to have like one thing on that job and they'll apply for it. So I think it's just a difference in also the expectations we have for ourselves.
Yes.
I think might play a little bit of role into that.
Yes.
Certainly in, I don't know. I mean, I'm noticing a lot more diversity, since I've come back to the market, to the West Michigan market. I've I've certainly noticed a big shift in diversity, thank goodness,
Good.
because it wasn't. I was a little bit like, I'm sure like you were, which is, one of the minorities, certainly.
Yeah.
So, Becca, as we come towards the end here, there is one question I ask every single guest that I have on the show, and that is, if you were to give one word or a short phrase that would be encouraging to another woman that's looking to start her business or build a big one, what would that be? What would that inspirational
Mm-hmm.
nugget be?
Yeah, what comes top of mind is do it. That one of the things that motivates me is I don't want any regrets.
Mm,
And if you've got just that little churning of I want to own my own business someday, step into it and just take that journey. You don't have to leave a secure job. It can be a side gig for a while, or it can be, at a certain point in your life. But because not everybody has that churning. So if there is a churning that, wow, I really just want to start my own business because it's scary, it's invigorating, it's extremely satisfying, and you're listening to your gut that says, I want to do this. I think this could just be a lot of fun. And you just learn something every day, whether it's about yourself, about your business, about your strategy. And that is just very rewarding. And not everybody has that desire. So even if it's not starting your own business, but it's going a different route in your career, or taking, preparing yourself for that next promotion, just don't be afraid of that. To your point, I think that fake it till you make it is an okay phrase, whether you're male or female. And I think males tend to live into that a little bit better than female. We don't want to disappoint people. We don't want to, I shouldn't speak in such broad terms, but a lot of us are just wired to, we don't want to fail. We don't want to disappoint people. We want to be our best version of ourselves. And you can do all of that and make mistakes and
mm,
learn and dust yourself off and keep going. So I just really, that encouragement is so important. And I just have seen that in my own life, the people that have encouraged me along the way, and what a difference that made in whatever I was doing. Those encouraging words are just extremely motivating.
yeah. Yeah, I love it. I think that's beautiful. And what haven't we covered today, Becca, that you would want to make sure that any sort of aspiring entrepreneur or current business owner should know, either
Yeah.
about you or just about having a business?
Yeah, I think confidence is a big part of it. And I think knowing yourself well enough to know whatever that next step is, to however you feed your confidence, to really take the time to do that, whether it's going for a run, going for a walk, having coffee with a friend. Keep your swagger up, and the people out there are waiting for you, and they want people to be successful. So I just see so many more pros than cons in taking that step into something uncomfortable. But I love living in that uncomfortable space. So just huge encouragement. And if anybody ever wants to just talk and process it, be more than happy to take some time and work through that with people.
Oh, that's really nice of you to offer. And
Yeah.
sort of speaking of that, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you, whether they have a position that they're looking for you to fill or they're the ones looking for the position? How should they reach out to you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the easiest and best, and feel free to put my contact information in the chat part of this, Elizabeth. Yeah, I think that's probably the easiest. Or I've got a website, avancersearch.com. Feel free to tap into that. So yeah, pretty easy to find out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for anybody who's listening, it's Avancer with no D. So it's just making sure that
Yes.
that you get to the right place.
which it's French for moving forward, which I thought was kind of a fun name, but it is a little bit of a tongue twister. So yes, Avancer.
Well, Becca, it's been an absolute delight having you here today. Thank you so much for being my guest and for joining me here. Thank you to our listeners who have joined us here on the Sparkstarter podcast. It's been a pleasure bringing you the uniquely inspiring stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I've been your host, Elizabeth Godey, and on behalf of all the awe-inspiring women entrepreneurs out there, I encourage you to not only dream big, but to ignite those dreams into action. Remember, every spark can lead to an extraordinary fire. So keep the spark alive for today, tomorrow, and the vibrant future beyond. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to never miss a spark. Until next time, stay ignited.